Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook live stream. And today we will be talking about Prey, Prey the movie, Prey the Predator 5 is the name for it. So if you haven't checked it out, it is now available on Hulu. Yeah, before I say anything else, Prey is the best Predator movie. Great action, great writing, amazing indigenous centered story of resistance, both to extraterrestrial invaders and also Earth based invaders. So if you haven't yet, I do recommend you check this movie out. Watch it. A lot of times I want to have like a lot more movies like this coming out. I mean, it is a great movie, even aside from being an indigenous person, seeing indigenous people in movies represented in action movies is always really great. This is the first time there has been a woman indigenous action movie protagonist. So, like, that's never happened before. Like, this is the fifth in the Predator series. There have been at least two other Alien versus Predator movies. There have been some indigenous people showing. I think in Predator 1 there was an indigenous side characters in there for a little bit, but Arnold Schwarzenegger is, of course, the Predator 1 protagonist, if you recall. His name is Alan Dutch Schaefer. This is Arnold's famous Jungle Special Forces movie. Schaefer and Dillon served together in Vietnam during battles of the Hue, and this is the original Predator. It's always been a movie that's really about. It's in a lot of ways it's about the Vietnam War and the guerrilla and jungle warfare that the U.S. was increasingly engaging in and getting its butt kicked in. Actually, I would argue, not argue. That's just factual. And speaking of American soldiers going into jungle, heavily foliated areas of other countries like Vietnam and South and Central American countries, and then getting their butts kicked. If you like Prey and you want to watch movies where and enjoy content where indigenous women who have a penchant for green beat the crap out of invading forces like colonizers, there is in fact a game that you can play that's what the whole entire game is about, and that game is called Decolonators, which I made with a Vietnamese communist woman who also knows how to operate heavy machinery and use guerrilla tactics. So actually, I'm just gonna play the trailer for this right now because this is actually directly related to this movie. And Luna Oy is also voices the main character and plays this character, kicking capitalist colonizer butts. Let's just play this. Okay, this is the game Decolonators that I made with Luna.
AD 1965. The U.S. invades Vietnam to prevent the spread of communism. The Americans bombed them into the Stone Age. Hundreds of thousands died. But the Vietnamese fight back with all their might.
Time to kick some capitalist colonizer butts. I'll be back with my tank. Ow! Tease but a scratch.
Your little commie village is about to be burned down.
You Western clowns are being.
There is no alternative to capitalism. Resistance is futile.
I've got your alternative right here, Your Majesty. We kick your money-grubbing colonizer butts out and build socialism.
Two men enter. No one leaves capitalism.
You made a big mistake coming to Vietnam, you spoil rich royal.
Starring Luna Oy, with Ophidian the Cobra and Kate Nix.
anyways, so there's that. So that's after you watch Prey movie, the best movie of the year, then you can go play Decolonators. You can get that on and all the sales of this game do go to support everything we do here at the Silver Spook cooperative. Decolonators is on. It's only $2 actually on itch right now, so you can go and get that on itch.io and play that. Anyways, ads aside, I just want to say that Prey is definitely we watched it last night. It's got, it's everything that was great about Predator, Predator 1, Predator 2, etc. But none of the stuff that doesn't make it good. Like, there's no good U.S. military, good U.S. That's I call these the good CIA movies, where it's like, like the Gray Man is like, well, there's some bad apples, but everything what the U.S. does in terms of its foreign policy and international interventions, it's all on the good side. Even Black Panther had the good CIA ending, where the CIA shows up in Africa, and the U.S.'s foreign policy in Africa is just like helping out African countries. And so Predator is one of those good U.S. empire movies messages, because all the main characters are American soldiers, and you're sympathetic with them. It's kind of like one of those what is the U.S. doing? Or in Predator 1, I mean, just kind of like, since we're already going there real fast, in Predator 1, Alan Dutch Schaefer is a leader of a team of protagonists in the first movie. He is a highly skilled and experienced special forces operator. He is sent on a mission in Valverde, right? Which is in where is that? It's a fictional country, but it's somewhere in South and Central. What does the United States do in South and Central America? Right? What does the United States do? What is the U.S. military doing in South and Central America? What is U.S. foreign policy in South and Central America? Is it to help Cuba build socialism and alleviate poverty and help material conditions? Is it to help out Chile? Is it to assist Bolivia? Or is it to coup Bolivia for all their lithium, destroy their country and back far-right extremism and get people killed and plunder their country? So that's the problem with movies, that are, the main characters are U.S. military. That's why Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is always doing terrible imperial propaganda, because you can't do a movie where the U.S. military are the main characters and are like, it's not questioned what they're doing, why they're doing it when they're there. Like, just as a counter example, the Suicide Squad with Peacemaker, which it's better than, because the Suicide Squad also features, right? It's an American superhero movie that also is based in the DC Comics, which it's American comic books. So it's not my favorite thing in the world, but I mean, Marvel and such. But the Suicide Squad, they're also sent by the U.S., government into South America, Corto Maltese, right? And they're tasked with this. Anyway, I'm not going to give you the whole plot, but basically they go there, right? But when in the U.S. interventions in Central South America, it's not unlike Predator. Actually, they're doing a lot of jungle special forces operating, right? But the difference is, like in Suicide Squad, the U.S. is Waller, who is like basically a CIA, U.S. federal, federal manager that's like, micromanaging and sending people here and there into South America, calling the shots, right? The U.S. government, generally speaking, in its foreign policy, is shown to be horrible, terrible, and complicit in all kind of terrible war crimes and net detrimental both to South America and to America's own people, right? And all the prisoners that they're using to do all these terrible war crimes in South America, right? So it's the Suicide Squad, and then Peacemaker is another show I like. Is one of those that's like it's less good CIA, good U.S. empire propaganda stuff going on, and that was a problem coming back, that was a problem that Predator had, right? Speaking of indigenous resistance, right? Predator is a movie that sidesteps the entire question of what was the U.S. doing in Vietnam, right? Where Decolonators is about the United States, right? AD 1965, the U.S. invades Vietnam, commits genocide to prevent the spread of communism. I mean, it's like to stop people from having their lives bettered and from equality from happening and actual democracy from happening, right? And from environmental cooperation, environmental coexistence with people. And then the U.S. commits genocide for plundering Vietnam, right? So like Decolonators is, I try to be, Decolonators is based on Contra, right? The game Contra, I talked about this last year a lot when I was making this game. The game Contra is based on Arnold Schwarzenegger, Special Forces, like the character. Look at the Contra. This is a Nintendo game from the 1980s when I was 5 years old. This game came out. Contra is based on Predator. Like the main character is based on Arnold's like hyper muscled 20-inch biceps, white American dude with a high and tight haircut and a giant ass machine gun, right? Contra is like alien. It alienizes the enemy forces, right? And you have a lot of, it starts in the jungle, right? The first level of Contra is, and it's, but the name Contra comes from horrible US imperial, this is a screenshot from Contra. The name Contra, it refers to horrible US crimes in Central South America, right? The Contra activities, which involved not helping South and Central America, but supporting US colonial plundering interests, right? We're coming back to Predator Prey, but I want to kind of set this up of what is Predator, right? What is really going on there to begin with. Predator is a story for Americans who got their asses kicked by indigenous Vietnamese women like Luna's family and indigenous Vietnamese people who were excellent at guerrilla fighting, fighting in the jungle, right? Building traps, like popping out from like a layer of leaves and sticks, right? And then blowing away an entire squad of American GIs, like caught with their pants down in a village somewhere on the outskirts of Saigon. The Vietnamese were really who the Predator is representing in Predator, right? The Predator is just indigenous fighters, actually, arguably, and similar in Prey. And Predator the movie is about the Americans' psychological but part of the Vietnamese strategy was to mess with the heads of the Americans and cause them to kind of freak out and then become disorganized, fall apart, in order to because the Vietnamese were 1,000 times like outmatched in terms of technological and economic power. Right? They didn't have like F-35s, and they have billions and $800 billion of warships and Tomahawk missiles and guidance systems and all this nonsense. But the Vietnamese didn't need that. They just had an incredible will to fight. You don't mess with them. Number two, they were communists. They were in the right against the capitalist imperialist murder squad and colonial thieves of the West. Number three, they were just better at fighting. And they had specific tactics, right? And the Predator is about America trying to deal with its failures in Vietnam and in South America and airbrush its war crimes across the world in the second half of the 20th century. That's what Predator actually is. Nobody wants to talk about that, but that's what it is. And every time there's an American movie ever made that doesn't, like Peacemaker or Suicide Squad, directly address this problem, all you're doing is PR for the military-industrial complex and global barbarism, Western barbarism, and plunder. So don't make those crappy movies. So that's why Prey is, so I front-loaded this stream with that because that's why Prey is way better than all these other movies. All the Predator movies. But it's also better in terms of writing, in terms of cinematography, in terms of the acting, I would argue, in terms of indigenous representation, in terms of the action sequences. Like, it's like The Revenant. Like, The Revenant is a very physical, like with Leo DiCaprio, but it's like, this one is more realistic, really, than The Revenant, and it doesn't center a white guy. We don't need more white dude colonizer main characters, right? Again, because that doesn't, not because they're like evil, but it's just like that's not the story that really needs to be told right now, you know, in this moment. And so it really never needed really to be told. The people that were always justified in, right, in the struggles, right? Not that nobody's like has no problems, but the indigenous people of the Turtle Island / you know, Americas, as the Spanish, the British, French, etc., were coming in. The French are one of the colonizer invaders, have always been in the right and still are in the right in resisting that invasion and murder and genocide and plunder and the slavery that Europeans put on the stolen lands. And yes, Hawaii is one of these indigenous resistances that continues to this day. And so, but so just on those grounds, on like moral grounds, these are just way better movies. But it's also just better in terms of in every category. Prey is the best Predator. Period. The Alien movies really were better than Predator. I mean, let's be freaking honest. Aliens. Predator was not the best of all the movies. I mean, I still like the Predator movies. They're just they're cheesy, silly movies. You know, Prey is like a seriously good movie. Not that I'm all for cheese and camp and comedy. You know this if you played Neofeud. But then there's another thing going on when we're talking about like important movies like Prey is and like because Prey is not a comedy. It's not funny. Let's put it that way, right? So if you just want to like laugh at some silly action movie bullshit, it's not really that movie. I mean, it has like lots of action in it. That's for sure. Like there's like I think the main actress's name is was it Amber Midthunder said every single day it was like there was no time off, you know, there was no slow day. Every single day it was like nonstop shooting, running up hills, jumping off of trees, like throwing hatchet, tomahawk, throwing shooting arrows. Like every single day was like constant action. And the movie is like full of action. Like almost the entire thing is action, but it's not just it's acted. A lot of the story is told through the action, so it's not just like action with the dumb script or something like that. It's like the story is like it is the best story of all the Predators, period. You know, and that's not even just from that's not even just because like as an indigenous person I feel represented and I feel like it's an important story. It's just a better story than the other Predators. The other ones are very like derivative and I don't know, just kind of lost. And it's kind of like when you're trying to do military industrial complex propaganda for Hollywood, because that's what Hollywood is. It's an arm of the diseducation industry for empire. It's hard to come up with good stories when everything is lies and garbage that you're telling, right? The last Predator I saw was the U.S. military is, you know, shows up to, you know, make super advanced Predator suits. And it's basically give Lockheed Martin more money. That's what all the Predator movies are, with few exceptions. And Prey is like the opposite of that. Prey is like the U.S. settler colonial state is illegitimate, and these people are rapists and murderers, and they're the real groomers that groom, for example, the people in Taiwan and Hawaii to love the United States and groom all of their own Americans to love a country that's denying them healthcare, housing, and food, and sending them off to die for horrible reasons like profits of billionaires. And Prey is a movie that does not, you know, it's not like, you know, there were some good colonizers like fuck all those people and then the indigenous woman character slaughters like at least 10 and then the Predator kills a whole lot. The Predator kills many colonizers. And yeah, no, they're just like, they're here to kill buffalo, take their skins, make a lot of money, try to kill indigenous people, enslave, rape, and pillage indigenous territory, and fuck those people. And so that's what this movie says. There's no, oh, well, I mean, there were some nice French priests who civilized some Indians. No, fuck those people. They were here to abuse and torture. There's no, oh, and we had a nice Thanksgiving dinner where we all sat down and we definitely didn't use, you know, we just all had some pumpkin pie and some turkey. And I was like, fuck you all, get out of my goddamn line, stop killing us. And so that's why this is the best. That's also another reason why this is praised the best Predator movie, period. But yeah, no. Amber Bitthunder kill. There's a scene in which Naru, the main character, right, that's wearing predator blood, kills 4 colonizers at one time, like fighting, like with very badass fighting with a hatchet that you can throw and you can pull it back and it with a rope and then catch it or fling it back in the opposite direction, which is pretty cool. That was a cool like device to make the action scenes like more interesting. And Naru kills 4 white dude colonizers that are all imprisoning, enslaving, and slaughtering indigenous people and killing all their buffalo. Kills like a Comanche. She kills 4 of them in one scene, and then she kills other ones in other scenes. There's at least 5. I'm thinking about it now. What the leader of the French colonizers? Most of them are they're French in this instance because of the historical period. Not that the British were any better, right? If you know these people, the Spanish, pouring the boiling soap down the throats of indigenous people, for not bringing Columbus enough gold, right? That was one of his fun pastimes. So, and also the reality is a lot of the war, actual fights between indigenous people and the white settler colonizers. Indigenous people won a lot of those battles. You know, they rarely wanted to actually go toe to toe with indigenous people, especially Comanches were one of these historically, right? There's a lot of cowboys and Indians movies with John Wayne and Clint Eastwood and other racist Hollywood stars, because Hollywood is a racist imperial propaganda arm, like I said, that makes white guys look like they're the valiant saviors, but they're actually the world's murderers and thieves. So there's a lot of John Wayne cowboy movies. Oh, one of these weeks I'm going to talk about Harder They Fall, or the all black cowboy movie, which also is amazing stuff. There's too many good movies that I watched this week, and all came out. Reservation Dogs, too many this week is like the smorgasbord of Silver Spook. Not Silver Spook. They just the smorgasbord of the best movies and shows on the planet came out this week. This is like the ultimate. This is like the bonanza of based movies and good movies week. But I can't talk about all of them at the same time. But Prey, it's like which the Harder They Fall is the actual history of most of the cowboys actually were not white, disproportionately not white. And and so it's speaking truth to going back to right the cowboy myth of strong white men with guns are going to bring freedom and democracy and prosperity by shooting bad guys. No, the police beat up poor people and black people and working class people and union people in unions and shit, right? And then mass incarcerate people. That's what they've always done, because the police are the white man club. That are here to make a lot of money, killing people that they can easily kill, just like Andrew Jackson slaughtered women and children, and he became president, right? In a similar, not the same, but in that similar time period, the white men preferred to go in the night and kill women and children in the teepees or bring smallpox blankets. They actually didn't want to fight indigenous people like toe to toe, because they usually got their ass kicked, just like America and Vietnam, getting their ass kicked. Right, a bunch of white guys, right? Daddy's boys, daddy's KKK club and suburb rich boys, showing up to add some notches to the belt, killing N-words and sand N-words, or noodle Chinese N-words, or whatever non-white people they can get their grubby little spoiled boy hands on, right? And so the white boy murder fascist club, that's the United States and the West generally, show up. Think they're gonna just kill a bunch of, non-white people easily and have a lot of fun, and then they get fucked up and then they go home, and then that's half of the U.S. military, and that's half of the Western forces. The other half is poor and black and brown people who need they gotta pay, $2,000 a month to keep their sister's daughter from dying from the horrible pain from spina bifida, and grandma's cancer rent is way high. And so then they're in the military because they need meds and fucking housing. And they show up and they're like, I don't want to be killing my people. And then they get sad and they come home and they become communists. And then they get, or they become like the Native Hawaiian Walter Riddy and other Hawaiian ex-military, or, some of them, they just go into depression and they, but it's the ones who get through that because they're like, what did I do? I did terrible things over there. But some of them come out and they're like, I'm going to stop this U.S. empire. But most of the U.S. military is actually just racist, useless clowns who got their asses kicked by Russians in Ukraine after they thought it was going to be like Iraq, killing sand N-words, like when they went to Iraq and just shot a bunch of people with American sniper Kyle, Mr. Kyle, who Mr. Clint Eastwood stand a lot because Clint is a racist piece of garbage that America used as the flagship for its entire country for 50 years. So white cowboy mentality, white man's showing up, bringing freedom, building a post office, civilizing the country, manifest destiny, doctrine of discovery, right? Mr. Pope Francis. I care about indigenous people, except not enough to do anything material about it. I'm a lying piece of white garbage I'm a Spanish colonizer from down there in South America doing the bidding of empire in the Vatican. That's who Pope Francis. He's a piece of complete garbage. So fuck that guy. You better hope the Comanche don't show up in the Vatican, man. I mean, that's not a threat. That's just in a video game. I might make a video game where the Comanche show up in the Vatican, and they see what we're gonna see where the doctrine of discovery is gonna go up your ass in a video game. Anyways, so there's never been any civilization in Europe, is my point, and they show up with this barbarism and they massacre indigenous people, or they try their best to, and then they get fucked up in this movie. And disproportionately by indigenous women wearing green. So that's why this is a true story. You know, I only make true stories like Decolonators, and this is the same story, which is the story of history. Also in Hawaii, lots of the people who actually fought on the front lines in the unification of Hawaii against empire was actually Hawaiian women. They're actually on the front lines. And then dudes come back later on. They tell stories about how macho and based and how macho and brave and valiant they were, but it's full of shit, just like in America, just like Clint Eastwood. But it's that the dudes everywhere is like that. You know, they're good at, like, you know, hitting things really hard sometimes and being shitty dickhead toxic people. Well, they don't actually do the real fighting because they're cowards inside. Speaking as a dude, so not when it needs to be fought. If they can kill people easily, like Nazis and fascists, they can just slaughter people easily. Dudes are down for that. But when it's actually bravery, courage, actually fighting, doing something useful, not so much. They're just good at waving the penis around. So, Prey. So this is Prey is a movie that is I'm not even joking. Like right now, who's on the front lines of the tiny house warriors against fossil fuel companies and empire? You know, who's on the front lines in all the indigenous water protector struggle? It's indigenous women and two-spirit people and queer people. So, you know, so that's why I don't want to. It's one of the reasons why. Not that I don't want to identify as a dude, but this is like I was socialized as a dude, even though I more identify as non-binary. But like, it's I mean, not that there's no place, but it's like it's all misplaced nowadays. That's for sure. And historically, it's still who's on the front lines of these struggles. It's the same thing, even in Africa, the people who are on the front lines in Ethiopia and the great civilizations that are all denied their history and recognition by the West, because West is a failed clown show of Greek and Roman and whitening people. The Kendake of Africa, as I like to bring up, actually were leaders, political leaders, and generals who led armies, but not unlike the United States, who has billionaires like Nancy Pelosi, millionaires like Nancy Pelosi and her husband, right, trying to make money, you know, bidding up the price of semiconductors, and then China's like, fuck you, no, and rich CIA clowns who don't do any fighting. They just lie, cheat, and steal, like Mike Pompeo, you know, like the entire United States, you know. All of the CEOs of Disney, right, a terrible company. I don't know. I probably shouldn't say that because Disney might cut off Prey too because they own Hulu now. But the people who make money from wars and death and destruction in the West are wealthy white guys, and the people that fight on the front line are poor people and disproportionately not white. In actual civilizations, they might have fights and battles and wars like Africa, but the peoples of Africa, like it's not a monolith, obviously. But when they were like the Kendake were political leaders, and they were generals, and they were women, and they went to the front line of the wars that they were fighting, because if they were going to fight a war, the people deciding to get thousands of people killed, or hundreds of thousands or more people killed, have to also pay the price of that war. So that means you don't go to unjust wars for needless slaughter and benefit of a tiny minority of people, because you're not going to go out and get yourself killed. How are you going to make money if you get yourself killed, right? But that's what Vietnam is another place. That's how you know it's based, because their actual leaders, the people that founded that country, were a lesbian couple that fought on the front lines thousands of years ago and established that country. And that's like a lot of, I would argue, a lot of why Vietnam still kicks everybody's ass and is actually a based country and is very successful socialism with communist parties and has trans rights and abortion is not banned and has resisted empire, is because of that history of the way that it's led. It's led by people on the front lines, and they're usually women. If there has to be a war fought, and who are they fighting? They're not fighting unjust wars. They're fighting wars when people are coming in to hurt the people inside, right? The people, the environment, the children inside. It's the women that are going to be there to fight. The dudes are all there to go to other countries, kill people, and take their stuff, and have other poorer dudes do the fighting, and then perpetuate toxic masculine culture, right? And those are the place. That's the entire Western world, right? So anyways, that's why it's a big reason. There's a patriarchal West, and then there's a gender equality or more feminine led indigenous cultures. There's a very important reason for that. Is because it rapidly goes in a very bad direction if it gets out of control. It's like virtually all of the bourgeois democracies are patriarchal. You look very closely, and the fascist countries and the imperialist countries, they're all patriarchal. There's a very good reason for that, and so that's another reason why Prey is the best movie of the year, and the best movie of the Predator series, because it doesn't feature some. There actually is another movie like this. There is a black female protagonist in Alien vs Predator, and so that one's actually pretty good too, for that reason. But it lacks other things. It lacks other things. But it's set in the 2000s. It has the guy who plays Wayland Yutani, Lance Henriksen, the guy who plays Bishop, who is actually the head of the Wayland Yutani Corporation in the Aliens and Predator universe, shows up in that movie again. But it's better than Predator because it's not just like, it's not just like CIA, U.S. empire good, U.S. intervening in South and Central America and getting innocent people killed and backing far right and coups and imperialism and sucking all the resources and making everyone poor. Alien vs Predator doesn't have that much. It does have like a sympathetic CEO of a giant corporation. So I don't know what that one. He's more sympathetic than I would like him to be. Mr. Whalen is a little too sympathetic. And it has like alienization of indigenous feats, so I don't like that. Like pyramids, all the pyramids and all the ancient Mayan, Cambodian, and African, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. All the great feats were aliens with big ass fucking spears and spaceships that built it, not indigenous feats. So I don't like that. But everything else about Alien vs Predator was better. Anyways, so back to the movie though. I'm not really talking too much about the movie. I'm talking around the movie and then dunking on shitty dudes. But it's a good time because it's like when you see things like what was it, Kentucky, abortion ban, or you know about this. But yesterday it was the first day of tying this to the present. Indiana State, Indiana passes near total abortion ban. So the first state to do so post Roe. So, so this is a time of increasing, right? Women are they were talking about, like, in the legislation, women being losing the vote, not that America has a democracy or anything, but losing the vote, losing the rights as people and becoming property again. Remember, women were property in the United States, right? Women were property in the United States until not even barely a century ago. And the U.S. currently, the Supreme Court and the forces of the United States, right? Tucker Carlson is the most popular person in the United States. It's the most popular show in the United States. and he's all full on board with that. Racial segregation and women's rights. It is not a coincidence that they want to roll women's rights back, and it coincides with the most horrible imperialist, abusive, coward-filled, coward-run country in the world. The most low down lying and stealing and cheating. And that's come the words of the U.S. rulers itself, Mike Pompeo. We lied, we cheated, we stole, we had entire training programs. It's not a coincidence that's one of the most patriarchal places that is banning women's rights. They're attacking China. China has abortion. China has access. Trans children have access to gender-affirming healthcare. Everyone has universal healthcare. Everyone has universal housing. Everyone has universal electricity. People will be dying. People are dying. I was taught every day I do a stream. I hear about 2 more people like left the United States, especially black people. Now white people leaving to go to China. Like, I'm out of this shithole, right? There's it's a place that, it's not that they don't have like any like toxic aspects at all, or they don't have any histories. They have history. Everywhere's complicated, but they have better women's rights in China. I'm sorry, they have better LGBTQ plus rights in China, and they're more based than the United States. Shit fire. The U.S. is just lucky China isn't more, they aren't more toxically masculine and aggressive, or they would have cut off all of your fucking healthcare and all of the food and all of the basic imports that you need, and America would be gone already. Because China makes all your stuff. You don't make anything. Your semiconductor. Nancy Pelosi is like, oh no, China is 50% of all the trade into Taiwan is causing this problem in Taiwan. 50% of all the trade into Taiwan comes from China, and the sand to make the majority of U.S. and the West semiconductors come out of Taiwan. The U.S. is not in a position to they're trying to get chip factories started up so they can make their own semiconductors for all of their cars and their phones and their watches and all their Lockheed Martin missile guidance systems that are garbage and don't fucking work because all your Google programmers got COVID, monkeypox, polio, Omicron, Beta, Epsilon variant and then died or quit. And then the semiconductors that are going to go into your Google, your Google's on fucking Facebook missile guidance system, right? With all your Lockheed Martin employees that are taking money while being Lockheed Martin taking GoFundMe money while being $200,000 a year Lockheed Martin murderers. All the semiconductors that Taiwan is making, that needs sand. China said, well, what we're gonna do is we're not gonna send you any more sand. Most of the sand comes from China. So China, well, no more sand for you, Taiwan. Taiwan's like, oh fuck, we're screwed. Nancy, why did you fly here and try to start World War III or try to get your military-industrial complex, threat level in the minds of Americans increased so we can get more money? Why did you do that? Because now we don't have any fucking... Anyways. So, long story short, the U.S. and the West are complete garbage. They're falling apart. And part of that is because they're patriarchal and a ban on abortion... The colonial reality, they're lying and they're cheating and they're stealing, and the fact that China doesn't ban abortion, right, and is another near peer. Actually, China is above peer. China has already surpassed the United States. It's not really a near peer rival. China's already passed the United States. The U.S. doesn't know it yet, and China's too nice to tell anybody about it. The reason why the U.S. is already lost this non-fight, it's not really a fight. It's just like it's a Western tantrum to clean its own room, clean its own racist, capitalist, abusive garbage up and be better. It's not really a fight. It's like China is the elder parent going like, stop being a little child and just like trade normal and just respect one China policy that you've already agreed to. Stop like trying to wiggle out of your chores, Stop trying to wiggle out of your responsibilities. Oh, what if we do a little? What if I just visit a little bit? And what if I just try to break the one China policy a little bit? Like, no, stop it, idiot. Your missiles don't even work. Your Pentagon chief already said our AI is light years ahead of yours and you're at kindergarten. What are you wasting time for? Stop getting your people killed. It's like a little child. That's the West. Period. So, anyways, but so this is not really related to Predator Prey, but I think it does tie in because Prey is a show where the truth is revealed, right? Even within, like, I think the one thing I don't like about Prey, I would say, is probably like, I can't speak for the Comanche, but like, it's made to seem like, well, I don't know, maybe it is, there's lots of dudes in Predator Prey, and anybody's kind of a dick in the indigenous community. It's those guys that are like insisting. They're like, you can't hunt. They're telling Naru. Naru is, just to give you a little bit of a backstory on this. In Prey, Naru's character is a trying to find a good little something to look at. So yeah, Naru's character in Prey, played by Amber Midthunder, is a character who is, she knows how to use the herbs and the medicine. One thing I really like about Prey is they are super accurate with all of the history and the research. Of course, I'm not an expert on exactly what Comanche were doing in the 1700s, but the attention to detail. There's like Amber Midthunder, who is indigenous herself. Oh, that's another. I mean, there's just so many things. Like Reservation Dogs, it's like all indigenous cast for a vast majority. All the main characters are indigenous. All the deeply humanized, like they're present enough to have any kind of character complexity and development. It's all indigenous characters, and they're all played by indigenous people. There's also an entire Comanche indigenous language version, which we watched, which is amazing too. There's so many things about this movie that's like any one of these things would put it like above the bar by miles, but the fact that it's got all these things together in one movie is pretty mind-blowing. But the indigenous characters in this community, right, in North Turtle Island in 1719, I think is the year 1719. Amber Midthunder's character knows, she's trained in medicine. She's trained in how to gather and collect the herbs. I mean, all that stuff. I'm in the middle of, I'm reading Brainy Sweetgrass, like studying lots and lots and lots of indigenous history and culture, a variety of them, for Neofeud 2 stuff. I'm actually releasing a game that I wanted to have it done by today, but it's not quite done. That deals exactly with this kind of thing. And as a native Hawaiian, our own ways of using nature and coexisting and being incredibly in tune with and in harmony with the natural world, and the indigenous people's actual practices, like the way they gather, the kind of satchels and the leathers that they would use for specific herbs, the kind of toothbrush that they use. Like Amber Midthunder was saying, like there's a specific toothbrush that I use at one point, and it's a kind of like wood-based toothbrush that the Comanche would have used in this time. So there's like a binder, like a 2-inch thick binder from the reports of the cast. There's a thick binder of all of the historical research and data that was informing, right, and the actual sets, the actual costumes, the actual objects that the characters are using, the way they spoke, the way they interacted. So it was like, I think I was saying, like, usually when you get an indigenous role, right, you're let me see if I get the exact quote. Amber representation in the Predator movie. Yeah. So let's see if I can find that. You very rarely get good representation as an indigenous person in indigenous roles in movies, right? In Hollywood generally. Good being accurate, respectful, or something to be proud of or proud about, right? Let's see. Yeah. So this is a quote from later on in the interview. I have been very intentional about not doing a lot of indigenous specific roles, said the actress, an enrolled tribal member of the Fort Peck, Asini Boine and Sioux tribe. She notes that with period stories, you very rarely get good representation. Good being accurate, respectful, something to be proud about. If a Predator movie could ever possibly be described as authentic or grounded, this would be the one, with Midthunder's performance being the anchor. Growing up in New Mexico, just as it was becoming a bustling production hub, the 25-year-old has long been entertainment adjacent. Anyways, so like the point is that like her character is like most movies, even ones that are set, like you have like there's lots of movies that are centering indigenous people in a serious drama, because Predator is not known for being a serious franchise. It's like 1 a.m. on Saturday night. I got nothing else to watch. Action movie. It's like stoner movies. It's just some action movie. It's kind of campy. It's been kind of That's what it is. It's not even a serious. Alien is not super serious, but it's like, you know, it's not quite Aliens and Alien. It's just a fun action movie, which is, you know, why we like it. There's multiple references in Neofeud, my cyberpunk adventure games, specifically to Predator. Shoot, do I have any pictures of that? Well, I'll find out later. I mean, I do like the Predator franchise because it's a lot of fun, but it's never been known for being like serious, authentic, right? Like I was like, this is an authentic, grounded movie. That's not what Predator has been known for, right? But even like I was saying, like even serious movies that are supposed to be serious about Indigenous people, they're not very well researched. This Predator movie is more well researched than like basically all the other movies that Amber's been in or knows of, right? And I would say like that's like very much the case. Like in terms of like a movie that comes from an Indigenous perspective, I mean, Reservation Dogs, of course, is like, you know, you can't. Reservation Dogs is just like the best movie made about the best TV show. Season 2 just came out this week. I can't. There's too many things to talk about this week. I'm like, I need to make 3 clones of myself and 3 different YouTube channels to deal with as many things that are coming out right now. But Reservation Dogs is like a TV series that's, you know, Taika Waititi, Sterling Harjo. It's like really wide and deep examination of what it means to be an Indigenous person, a Native person in America, a Native person in, you know, in Oklahoma in 2020s. And also it goes through history too. But, you know, short of that, you don't have a lot of really good movies that really deal with the Indigenous realities and history. And so this is one of those that's like, you know, well, yeah, I mean, I think there's one other show, not Longmire. There's one other one that Amber brought up, but they're very few and far between. You're usually, like Amber's saying, like you're usually, you know, the dream for any actor is really to be able to choose what space you take up. You know, anyways, it's like, I think she was like, most movies and shows you're in, you're a set piece in someone else's story. You're just a token Indigenous person, that Native person. Like in Predator 1, there was an Indigenous character. I'm pretty sure. Let me just double check that. Predator 1, Native America. I think there was one. Yeah, there was one guy, Sonny Lanham. There's one Native person, Indigenous person in Predator, but you know, he's kind of a side character. I think he's somebody who does like Spot the Predator, but it doesn't really explore anything about Native Americans, what it's to be Indigenous person. It's just he's another soldier of the United States who has some kind of senses about him, who happens to be Native, which is better than having none, right? And they're also black soldiers, but you know, the U.S. military has, like I say, the U.S. military is half, you know, racist murderers for empire, the children of rich kids from the suburbs who got done making right-wing podcasts trying to be Joe Rogan in mommy's basement, then they sign up to go kill some people in the Middle East or in Asia or in Ukraine. And then the other half of the military is poor black and brown non-white people who need to make their rent, and they can't. They're done highlighting receipts in the Walmart, and now they're signing up for the military. It's like half my family. Some of them are actually like, it's complicated, but you know, some of them are like, I'm gonna go kill me some people because I love America so much. But anyways, you know, most of the time you're not gonna get good, like, what is it to be Indigenous, right? To be Indigenous, the United States gave the Cherokee people body bags in the COVID-19 pandemic. They basically said, we're still doing biological warfare. Go and die. Go die. That's what the United States, they literally gave to Indigenous people of the United States, the so-called United States that cares about human rights and ethnic minorities, and accuses other countries, like the very big one in the East, of human right violations. And the United States literally gave body bags, no help at all, just body bags, and said, as a message to the Indigenous people of the United States to go die. You know, America did not even nearly enough for its own American citizens, white or otherwise, but it literally did nothing for Indigenous people. It just said, screw you, just die. So that's what it's like to be Indigenous. That's how the United States treats the Native Hawaiians, especially when Native Hawaiians like myself who really go, I want to actually be a Native Hawaiian. I don't want to just like be another stormtrooper. I don't want to just be the token Hawaiian carrying the gun for empire. If you do that, you might get some money, get a little better, but you're still gonna have racism lobbed at you, and you're still gonna watch your land be destroyed and poisoned. Like the U.S. military is still spilling jet fuel into native Hawaiian water. Oahu is gonna be uninhabitable soon. I was just reading articles, and everyone's like in denial of that, right? But like, to be indigenous to this day means to be an enemy of the United States, right? As Haunani K. Trash said, the United States gives death to native people. How do you symbolize that better than having a bunch of body bags thrown at you in 2020? That's the perfect symbol. Here's a bunch of police and attack dogs, and here's poisoned water. Here's a 5 times higher death rate in hospitals, right? Canada kills indigenous people. Nurses fill indigenous people's veins full of morphine, knowing they're allergic to it, just to kill them on camera in Canada and get away with it in Quebec, right? The U.S. and Canada kill indigenous people. That's the reality. That's the reality. They don't care at all. They want them gone so they can take oil, maple trees, agriculture, put another settler suburb, and some black slaves in a for-profit prison on that land. That's what the United States and Canada and settler colonies think of indigenous people. To be indigenous in 2022 is to still have to be a warrior of sorts. It's not the same as being indigenous in 1719, having to resist invading armies. But it's if you really assert that, because indigenous people's ways are communistic, and United States goes to war to prevent the spread of communism, right? Like in Vietnam. It's the same reason, very similar, if not same thrust of the Vietnam War is the same war the United States has on indigenous people. Right? It's the same war against, that's the eradication of the Hawaiian language. Why was the Hawaiian language banned? Not just because we don't like the sound of the language. You get rid of the language, you get rid of the culture, you get rid of the history, and you erase people's minds to kill the Indian inside, because the indigenous way is communistic, is a major facet of that. And communism and capitalism, the United States' way, capitalist, racist, patriarchal capitalism cannot coexist. This is the United States this is the U.S. federal government's own words. The Department of Indian Affairs, the United States private property and capitalist system cannot, what they call civilization, cannot coexist with the indigenous collectivist communist ways. One of these must triumph. Surely it will be the Western capitalist way. That was 1800s United States federal government. That's still their policy. So that is not realistic. These movies where it's, and there's a native person, he's just showing up and he just loves carrying guns for the United States and it's all fine. Look, there's an indigenous person somewhere in a high place, Look, there's Elizabeth Warren is 164th Cherokee. So now the indigenous people and the United States Americans are living in harmony. No. They're still trying to kill us all. That's why they're poisoning our water right now. Not just our water in Hawaii. They're poisoning all the water. At the DAPL, the Dakota, the Sioux, all the water. So the Prey is not a story of 1719. Prey is a story of 2022. But instead of like throwing hatchets into the faces of, guys speaking French as they're trying to rape you, putting you inside of a cage, and you gotta bite their hand and then chop their grooming, diseducating, murderous white head off. It's like educating people and fighting with peaceful tools and whatever tools we have. Showing up to the Oahu Water Protectors, showing up to the pipeline, spreading it, trying to educate, getting 5 million shares on why the United States cannot speak on other people's human rights violations when they're violating Hawaiian human rights. Whatever tools you have to use, because it's still a fight for survival, and it's also a fight for the existence of non-patriarchal, gender equality, LGBT, like I've been talking about a lot recently, like equality across all, and harmony, actual equality, actual coexistence and harmony with differences across gender, across race, across people, human to non-human relative, human to Aina or to nature, and also coexistence from nation to nation, right? Indigenous people would be happy if the United States was willing to if the U.S. treated its indigenous people the way China's treated its ethnic minorities, this wouldn't be a problem, because because they have 2.5 times as many mosques. Their life expectancies have all gone up. Their wages have gone up higher than the average Chinese wage in the last 40 years, which has gone up 4 times. The United States wages have flatlined or collapsed compared to the housing, education, and costs of your rent, your education, and now your food, right? So if the United States treated indigenous peoples and ethnic minorities the way that actually based indigenous socialist civilizations, right? And Vietnam is another one. If Vietnam has a Muslim and multiple 54 separate ethnic minorities who all actually get empowered. And they don't just talk about how, oh, it's Black Lives Matter month. Oh, it's Black History Month. Hey, everybody, it's Indigenous History Month. It's Indigenous History Month, and then there's 11 months of destruction, massacre, body bags, subjugation, and poisoned fucking water, right? But that's because the West is just a lie, and all of Europe is like that too. They don't. There's no money where the mouth is. There's only a bunch of mouth. It's all as African countries would say. There's a lot of platitudes and lectures and grandstanding and colonial mentality and condescension, and then there's no concrete change, right? And they just keep taking our shit. But it's like that inside the United States. I would, inside Europe too, right? And gay people are responsible for all of the smallpox, right? That's still going around, right to this moment. And people are spreading like COVID-19, anti-Asian racism, blaming Asians for the COVID, not educating people about what it really is, and not doing things early and rapidly, and do it early, do it often, and do it complete, right? Lockdowns and testing and tracing. And now COVID is everywhere, rampant. Monkeypox, but instead of anti-Asian racism, it's like anti-LGBTQ plus hate. And now you have exploding monkeypox. The U.S. is the #1 monkeypox, and Europe is full of fucking monkeypox because everybody thought it was the gay disease. So if the U.S. could, and the West, Europe included, NATO, all the NATO countries, all the U.S.'s friends, including Japan, with its Nazi, racist, fascist, Abe worshipping groups backed by the United States, and all these other collaborators, if they could just like treat indigenous and ethnic minorities with actual respect and help and actually care for them and actually uplift them and not just talk. Like all of Hawaii's governors, they're all silent on Red Hill now. All the politicians are all like, oh, I'm not going to say nothing about that because I got all my money from the U.S. empire, and the military industrial complex just threw me a bag of fucking money and prime real estate in Waikiki. So I'm still, if there was actual care for Native Hawaiians, I wouldn't have to do all this. I'd just be like, oh yeah, I'm fine being a part of this larger federation called the United States. That's not really what it is. It's not like big things are bad, small things are good, or small things are bad, big groups are good. It's like, materially, are people actually having their peoples respected? Are they being traded? Are they being treated with disrespect? Are they being plundered, or are they not? And the concrete reality is, it's not. The concrete reality of Hawaii is we're the most ethnically. Black people are 2.5 times more likely to go to prison, and they're over incarcerated in the world's, by far the world's biggest forced labor operations. Not China, it's the United States, 2.5 million people by far. And black people make up 2.5 times per capita proportionally more than white people in those prisons. And Hawaiians are 1.6, almost 2 times more likely to go to prison than African Americans, which is already terrible. So again, that's just one of countless statistics. We're the most homeless. Hawaii is 2 magnitudes more economically unequal than the most economically unequal one of the most economically unequal areas, Washington D.C., in the most economically unequal country, the United States. Hawaii is the worst of the worst in terms of economic disparities. You speak about working class. It's like a 156 on a scale of 100 is the average of the United States. 156 is D.C., the worst in the continent. Hawaii is 192, or basically it's like 2 orders of magnitude more. The difficulty surviving for the cost of living compared to what your wages that you make. Hawaii is the worst, and Hawaii is not even a legitimate state. That's another whole factor, right? So I wouldn't be talking about these things. I wouldn't be upset about these things if there was nothing to be upset about. You know, like I wouldn't be upset with these things if I didn't work with thousands of homeless children, disproportionately Pacific Islander, Indigenous, Asian, and Pacific Islander. In Hawaii, it's Asian and Pacific Islander. And there's also, you know, there's less total black population. The thing is, a lot of the black population in Hawaii are in the military because they're all stationed. So they're actually doing better, but they're doing better because they're pulling triggers for the empire right now than the average African American person. See, the African American person, the black person that's in like Los Angeles or Cincinnati or starving on the side of next to George Floyd's grave in Minneapolis, that person is not doing nearly as well as the black person in the U.S. military because they're not a stormtrooper being paid off. They're just starving, trying to drive Uber, surviving racist America. But in Hawaii, you have a disproportionate, the African people that are in Hawaii, a lot of them, the total population, are people in the military. And so that accounts for some of that. You know, but the black people who are in Hawaii and they're just living in Hawaii, I mean, they're in a similar level of, you know, poverty. But the most incarcerated ethnicity is Pacific Islander Native Hawaiian in the so-called United States. But you know, all these peoples, whether they are African people, the Asian peoples, indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, North and South, Pacific peoples, we all would be happy to not have to. We would like to not have to fight for our equality and our respect and our economic and our economic equality, our social and racial equality. We would happy to not have to do that, right? We'd like to be like Vietnam or China and just like coexist and things be cool. And we just make videos we just make TikToks and we make Twitter posts about food. That's what a lot of China is just like, hey, look at this food. Look at this cool wall we built. Look at this environmental project where we undesertified 10 million acres and put solar panels and alfalfa grass. And it's like culturally respectful of the people of that region. It's environmentally sound. It's technologically advanced. And that's what all their Twitter posts, all their social media is all positive stuff. Not all, but it's like a lot of this is like really positive stuff. And then they're like, what the fuck are these Americans doing? What are these Westerners doing? And then in the West, it's all, oh my God, I'm so fucked right now. Can I have $10? Can I have $100 so I can pay my $500 insulin bill plus my rent is backed up? You know, and it's like, wow, that's really fucked up. Why you got all these homeless, healthcareless people? We don't have any of those in China. They don't exist. If there's a problem, they have the communities that they're from and the relationships. They have the entire government has a duty and a responsibility that is not just on paper. It's carried out to make sure everybody's housed, fed, and clothed. Like literally, that's like. And if you don't carry out the responsibility of the government, people's like heads roll. Sometimes literally, they don't fuck around. You know, they don't fuck around in actual civilizations. In the West, there's never been a civilization, so they say freedom, equality, and then they get everybody killed and murdered for nothing or for billionaire profits. But in East Asian countries, they actually make good on their word. I mean, the socialist ones, the ones in the U.S. orbit, like the separatists in Taiwan and Japan, which is part of China. Taiwan is part of China. In Japan and South Korea, those people that are all on the take of the U.S. empire, like the people pulling the triggers for it, they're all complicit and they're all garbage people. But the people like actually from their indigenous territories that are practicing, you know, win-win cooperation, they don't have to deal with these. And that's one thing Americans can't understand. They don't know what it's like to have a government. That's why anarchism is really good for empire. It's not really good. They don't want anarchism to actually succeed in the United States, and that's why they make sure they're a bunch of useless, spoiled little rich kids for the most part, or you know, disproportionately white. That's who becomes this group of people. But it's useful because then they can get people to make a bunch of posts and push around the world for other people's actually successful civilizations to be destroyed and replaced with complicit puppet governments of racist capitalist empire. So that's where anarchism is useful abroad. They don't really like it too much at home. It's a little bit of a nuisance. They haven't really, the U.S. prefers the fascists. That's why it throws Tucker Carlson to the forefront, and that's what's leading. But it's useful inside to believe that there is nowhere on this earth that there has ever been a successful government. You look at what do indigenous people have? Do they have? Do they just like let's not have any organization, or do they organize? And a lot of the time, it's actually women-led governments, like women-led networks of all of the aunties, right? In Hawaii or in Turtle Island, everybody knows what they would talk about when you talk about the aunties are getting together and aunties are going to sort this thing out. Like that's you know, and there's a order to that. that is not necessarily understood and known to these, I don't know what these egoists and I don't know, these strange libertarian neo-settler colonial racist garbage people that are all calling themselves anarchists. But anyways, I don't want to talk about it too much because it's just there's too much brain muddling and brain poison to even try to weed through. And I'm not talking about Prey enough. But that's the history of the United States. And we have to. It's hard to talk about being indigenous without weeding through all of this crap. You know what I'm saying? But Prey does go through it. Prey is a movie because I come to Amber Mid Thunder and I'm not talking about Amber Mid Thunder. The character is let me just change the picture so you don't have to look at that. So the character of Naru is trained in medicine, trained in like tending to wounds. It's like there were different roles for the feminine and masculine people in a lot of indigenous cultures. That's like that is a thing, right? I don't know. I feel like they playing up a little bit of like, you can't hunt because you're you're not good. They don't say like you can't hunt because you're a girl, but a lot of the one thing I didn't like as much was like they play that up like it's really the central theme. But I guess on the other hand, it does also kind of show. At least I can get Prey, the indigenous hunters. Like the other hunters, like they're all basically dude coded people. They're like masculine or male coded people, and they're like, you can't hunt. You don't there's some dick waving toxic masculine bullshit going on for bits of that. Like some of them, like Naru's, I think it's Naru's brother, the kind of leader, is like wants to support Naru, but it's kind of like, I don't think this is really for you, this hunting thing. But other of the boys that are hunting are like, you can't hunt, this is not the place for you. You should just go back and you should just do the medicine. You can doctor us when we get hurt, and there's like, that's part of it. And Naru's like, no, I can hunt, I can do this. And even the mom is kind of like, you don't have to. I mean, so there's like that. I'm just like, it's a thing. But it does kind of, it comes in later because later on a bunch of them also get killed. And Amber Midthunder's character Naru survives, and then uses like her perception and observation, which is actually very important, right? It's actual science, right? The observing of nature and the plants, the patterns, right? This plant causes the body temperature to decrease massively, right? Comes into play when the Predator, which uses infrared thermal heat-seeking vision, right, which is what Predator uses historically and throughout the franchise. Arnold Schwarzenegger famously covers himself in Predator 1 with very chilled, cool, sloppy, I'm sure it smelled like feces. No, it's probably just like some kind of clay. Arnold covers himself in mud in Predator 1 because the Predator has heat vision to avoid the Predator, right? That's the way he ends up beating the Predator by the end. The indigenous character like discovers, when you eat this, when you have this, or they have this knowledge, when you eat this herb or plant, it decreases your body temperature. This one stops pain. This is the boil on the face plant, right? This plant is accelerates your heart rate. This is this one gets this is the vision plant, and then you see visions, right? Sometimes you smoke that one. This is the aspirin plant. Aspirin was given to the West by indigenous people, and along with many medicines, because indigenous people and indigenous culture and indigenous society revolves around actual science that was denied and still is denied by Western scientists and academia, sadly, to this day. And then white guys disproportionately white academics, professors, anthropologists, biologists, etc., and scientists take credit for indigenous wisdom as Western science. And this is a really messed up thing that still continues to this day. and then don't give the indigenous people any credit. There's no repatriation. There's no restoration of equity. They just rip stuff off and then sell it as their own. They rip off indigenous culture and sell it in the movies, right? So that's another thing that sadly happens to this day. But in the movie you see like that the science, which is based on observation and testing and determining patterns, using concrete empirical methods, like that's a thing that happens in the movie. So I like that part about that, where Amber, the character is they don't say every single like it's not like they show that's not like a forefront of the movie, but that's something happening in the background, which is that like Naru's abilities in science really, and also but just in observation and understanding of the forest, the wilderness, the plants, the animals, right? How they interact, and then how the new entities like the white humans and then the space invader aliens, how they work, and studying them is also how Naru ultimately ends up defeating the Predator, which I'm not gonna tell you how because I want you to watch it. But the interaction with the studying of things is very important, and that's what differentiates Naru's character from the rest of the tribe, or from and that's when I like I don't know how real that's when I'm like you need some kind of arc for the drama for the show, but I'm like, wouldn't all the indigenous people kind of be in tune with nature and understand that you need to seek out nature? I mean, it's kind of like it's a little bit like, it's not like, it would be like, oh, there was this one really good Vietnamese guerrilla fighter that saved everyone. No, it's like all the Vietnamese were like really good at what they did because that's their culture. They fucking kick asses of invaders. That's what they do, It'd be going like, the main character in Decolonators is Tanga Kong. I mean, it's a video game, right? But it'd be going like all of Vietnam was saved by the great exploits of this one Viet Cong woman fighter who beat the entire American army, and everyone else didn't know what they were doing. No, it's like all the Viet Cong were expert fighters. But anyways, most indigenous people would be experts at observation and, seeing the patterns, knowing the plants, right? Knowing the, what this broken twig means in this place, what kind of moss that is, and what medicinal purpose it has as a kind of Novocaine, like I know kukui is a oil that is a pain reliever for dental problems. And I'm not even close to as in tune as I want to be, because America ripped my Hawaiian culture out of me, because America violates human rights of indigenous people, like I already said, right? That's why I don't speak Hawaiian language very well, because they destroyed my language and they banned me from speaking it, and they still beat. They punish children for speaking Hawaiian to this day. But if we didn't, we would be much right. If we did, we keep a lot of our culture and language, we would be way more in tune than we still are very in tune with a lot of Hawaiian nature, but we would be even more, right? And so anyway, so my point is, it is not a freak or unique thing for a character to be very, very good at observation. Anyways, I'm gonna get off of that point. So Amber Midthunder's character Naru has to kind of like prove herself as has to prove herself as a great hunter and warrior. She has to have like her test. Her trial is what they call it. What is going to be your trial? And so they at one point they're going on a hunt for a cat, a big cat, a mountain lion, right? That's attacking the people of the tribe, and so they have to go on this hunt. Amber's like, Naru's like, I'm ready to go. I can do this. And but and there's a lot of naysayers, right? And they're like, no, you can't do this. You can't. It's too dangerous. You got to just fix up our wounds. And also Naru is the one who has been looking very closely and is like, the cat is not really what's most dangerous. Like, it's not the cat. And it's like, well, maybe it's a bear. And there's a very large print, right? A lot of this movie it's all like that. I do like that. Like, everything in the movie is like observation, like looking at prints, looking at paws, looking at the tracks, it's all science. It's all the science of survival and hunter gathering in Turtle Island circa 1700s. This is what it is, right? This print is too big to be a bear, though, right? And the other boys are like, no, it has to be a bear. It has to be a bear. No, it's like, and Naru's like, no, this is, and Naru like breaks a stick. So we didn't have like rulers and yardsticks, right? Indigenous people didn't have rulers and yardsticks, but Hawaiians had a way of measuring that was using the coconut or the lahala or another twine made from one of the trees. I know this is one way they would measure canoes for, like, for example, like the Native Hawaiian, Indigenous, Austronesian wayfinding. You take a rope of some kind, and then it was all relativistic, so it was all based on ratios and halving, right, or thirds, and then halving. So you take a rope, measure the length of the boat, right, when you're cutting down the koa tree or whatever to build the canoe. You have that, and then you have it again into a quarter, and then the length of that rope would be, for example, the ama or the yaku. These are like the outriggers, right? So, and then the height of the sail. There were systems of measurement that didn't use centimeters, Fahrenheit, and Celsius, and pounds. It didn't use scales and these kind of things. But there were systems of measurement that were all based on fractions and ratios. And so in the science of that measurement gave you the optimum length, width, height, volume, etc. of the canoes that we used to sail to every continent in the world. When Europeans were still hugging their coast and couldn't find their way, they couldn't tell if they were in the Caribbean or in India, right? Like Mr. Columbus, right? Thousands of years before that, we already discovered every continent on the planet, and most of the islands were already discovered by the indigenous Austronesian peoples. And anyway, so my point is that was all science, and that was all measurement, and that was observation, and generations and years and decades and centuries and millennia of observation and handing this down through oral traditions, right? And that's how we built the canoes. And then the colonization came and said, "You're a bunch of savages and backwards, superstitious, non-scientific people, and we're going to eradicate your language, culture, and plunder you all to shit." And then there was like a handful of master navigators left, and none in Hawaii after that process and the banning of our language and the culture. So, but anyways, so Naru in this is using like breaks up. There's one point where there's a bear print. Let's see if I can get a bear print in Prey. I'm probably not gonna be able to get it. There's a bear print in the ground like this, right? And Naru's like, well, and is measuring. It takes a stick and then breaks the stick at a certain point and measures it. So I'm saying like there's a way of doing measurement and comparison and examination and looking at patterns in nature and going, this print is too big to be a bear. This cannot be that. This is something else, right? And the dudes are not believing Naru, but Naru's like, no, this is what it is. So Naru's like looking for something else. So Naru is the one who figures out that there is an otherworldly visitor already there, something else, some kind of a monster of some sort. That's not a bear, and everyone else doesn't really believe. But a lot of that, and Naru figures all this stuff out by being a very close observer of the natural world and all of the world. All of the world is part of nature, really, but the observing the world before altered by Western quote unquote modernity, let's say. Anyway, yeah. So I that's one thing I really liked about the character in that part of the movie. And let's see, let me go back to this. Yeah, so we're talking about Predator. We're talking about Prey and indigenous resistance. There's like really amazing scenes in it where it's like the Predator. There's a scene where the Predator is invisible. If you don't know anything about Predator is a super advanced extraterrestrial alien with a culture that revolves around trophy hunting on entire planets. They go from planet to planet, hunt the most dangerous and hostile species on each planet, take the heads as trophies inside of their their spacecraft and move on. And they visited the Earth many times, and they come back every so many decades or centuries, and they visit again, and then they do some more hunting. And so the predator can go invisible, right? They have a cloaking mechanism that causes them to disappear, right? And you can barely see them except for like a chameleon or a light bending apparatus. It's science fiction, right? They can basically disappear with the exception of like this vague shimmer of light and kind of like a funhouse mirror effect happening to the background. And there's a scene where the predator goes invisible in Prey, and there is an ant on the leg of the predator. So you see the leg of the predator as it's invisible, and then you see this ant like hovering in midair on its ankle area. A mouse is being a predator, right? Is looking at the ant. The mouse jumps up and gobbles the ant up, and then the mouse is like chewing on the ant and swallowing the ant, a snake comes up behind, and the snake darts forward and injects venom with its fangs into the mouse, and chomps the mouse, and the snake is predating the mouse. And then as the snake is swallowing the mouse, the snake starts sniffing the air, and it's like, what is this? There's something here, right? Because the predator is invisible, right? And then all of a sudden you see the snake kind of recognize that there's something there, and as the snake's mouth opens up, the fangs are exposed, and there's huge scary fangs, and the snake's about to like bite, and as it's like moving forward, the two predator blades slash through the snake's skull, and the predator takes a snake, and then the predator alien skins the snake and takes the snake as a trophy, takes its spine out. The predator, and so it's a really the way that scene plays out. It's like really amazing because you can see like it's it's the circle of life shit like this. The smallest the insect, right, the ant that's harvesting. Actually, some ants, fire ants, will predate on other insects as well by mass sudden pheromone based collective stinging, almost like a general strike. Collective mass punching at larger entities. They can take out a cockroach or something even larger, a small mouse. But anyways, so the ant is predated by the mouse. The mouse is predatored by the snake. The snake is predated by the predator, and the predator is predated by the indigenous women. Yeah, and the colonizer is predated by the indigenous finally. But but it's because it kind of like shows there's actually several scenes like that. Like that scene is like the best. That scene is better than any scene in all the Predator movies, just in cinematography and like kind of like the meaning of that scene. It's like the Revenant. Like the Revenant kind of deals with this a little bit, but it's not. The scene with the bear and Leo DiCaprio being attacked by the bear. There's a lot of like hyper realism stuff like that kind of happening, but there's many scenes like that, but they're better and they're better placed within the story of the world in Prey, I would argue, kind of symbolizing what's actually happening, right? And then shortly after that, there's another scene where there is a bear predating on a deer. The bear is like caught the deer, and the bear is eating the deer, and then Naru sees the bear because Naru's trying to prove herself as a hunter. Takes the aim and goes to shoot at the bear. Break the arrow. The bow breaks, and Naru's like, the bear is startled. The bear is like, "What's happening?" And the bear comes looking for Naru and starts sniffing the air. Well, as Naru's trying to fix the bow. So that's kind of like talking about Naru's like needs to get better at using the hunting tools. So like there is some like rationale. There is some evidence behind the dudes going like, I don't know if you're ready to hunt, because Naru does kind of like not quite have the hatchet throwing and the bow skills down very well at the beginning. Like Naru gets better over time, but at the beginning Naru has to like level up a little bit. They said Amber Madonna said I had to practice like hatchet throwing and bow shooting for like a month. Like it was a lot of training to get ready for some of these scenes, but there's a lot of it. It's a whole fucking lot of it. I think Amber Midnight, the main character of Prey, does more fighting than Arnold Schwarzenegger's, big giant, Joe Rogan'd out fucking 10,000 ounces of testosterone and steroids body. Amber Midnight does more fighting than Arnold, actually, I think, in this movie. I think if you go like second by second, minute by minute, there's more fighting. But there's a lot, and so like, but anyways, in the beginning, like, Naru needs like a montage, like a montage to suddenly go through 30 seconds and gain master skills in boxing, like in Rocky, like, so there's not really a montage, but it's like over time, like Naru's getting better. But anyways, so there's a scene where the bear is eating the deer. The deer is being predated by the bear. The human is trying to predate on the bear and fails. And then the bear is suddenly turning, and the bear is gonna come eat Naru. And then, the bear, and you probably have seen it in the trailer. And there's a scene where the bear is chasing Naru around. Naru has to like dive under the water to get away from the bear. Is like fighting for her life. This giant, like 10-foot tall, monstrous, grizzly beast is like smashing through, foot thick logs that Naru's like underneath this like big assemblage of like wood and detritus in a river. And the bear is like smashing through this pile of wood, of sticks, and his like giant teeth are like gnashing as it's trying to bite Naru's head off. And all of a sudden the bear like turns around, and you might see that in the trailer. And then there's like this like flicker of light above the water, and there's like wakes of water inexplicably in the middle of nowhere, and then it's a predator standing there, right? And then the bear fights invisible. The predator hand-to-hand combat fights the bear, giant 10-foot grizzly, and then it's like lifts the bear, eventually like it gets kind of beat up, but then eventually like kills the bear and like lifts the bear above the predator's head like a 2,000-pound bear. So I mean or multi-ton bear is being like gorilla pressed above its head. So that's how it is a difficult boss fight that is in store for Naru, the indigenous woman main character of this story. So anyways, and so then Naru's like running away. But technically, I guess the predator also saved Naru from dying. So anyways, but it's just the food chain comes up many times, and it's kind of like predation is a thing that happens, and hunting is a thing that all of these creatures are doing. That's in the natural world, and the what's the other scene? Oh, there's one more scene. There's a deer. So the deer and the bear and then the predator. There's the ant and then the mouse and then the snake and then the predator, right? As the top of the food chain, as the master of puppets. I'm sorry, I'm crossing the Stranger Things streams. The master of the food web, puppeteering it all. I mean, literally, predators do come in and alter the entire food web by dropping millions of xenomorph aliens, so they have something harder to hunt at some point. So I guess they are masters of the food web puppets, puppeteering the biome. And then there's another one where it's like there's a bunny. There's a bunny being hunted by a wolf in the field. The wolf eats the bunny, and then the predator finds the wolf, and then the wolf and so there's a series of these where you can see there are animals in the wild that are just doing their predating, and the predator shows up and predates on them. And the predator is also redesigned in this movie series. Historically, the predator has a very crab-like face. Like if the predator's face, it kind of looks like a cross between predator face kind of looks like a cross between a centipede, a crab. Some people call it a certain genitalia face, but it's a cross between a crab and a centipede with huge mandibles and some kind of like reptile. It definitely looks very alien, that's for sure, right? Kind of has like inset eyes between these like angry, thick ridge brows, and it wears that certain mask. The predator is redesigned though for this one. Predator and Prey, the face is like redesigned, the head is much taller and longer. It almost looks like a cow or a horse head, like a long head. It does, but like it's longer. It's not necessarily look like a cow, but it is more kind of frightening and demonic looking in certain ways. The eyes are up here, you know, like cow eyes or like ungulate eyes are like high and they have like a long snout and the mouth down here, and the mouth is much longer. With like the top mandibles are like way up here, and the lower mandibles like are it's like there's like about almost 2 feet of distance between them. And it has this, the redesign has this like the mask is almost looks like a skull or a bone, a mask constructed of like segments of bone plating or some type. But it looks much more primal looking. The weapons that it has, it doesn't look as advanced alien technology looking as some of the previous ones do. It has very long dreadlocks. Anyways, but it kind of like it fits it, and so as the Predator is walking around, like look, even its costume, it looks more like it's spears, it's armors, its skin, it looks like patterned after like a cross between like a cheetah and a puma. It has like actual black hair looking dreadlocks looking things. That's been a thing in Predator for its entire series. He's like dreadlock like comes into play in Predator 2 and with King Willie and the gangs from, was it Jamaica or Haiti? I can't remember which one it was, but the characters resemble the Predator, and then there's actual a sword fight between the head of the Haitian gang in Los Angeles and the Predator, who also, they kind of look similar. Anyways, but the Predators they've always kind of looked and acted and behaved in ways that like resemble certain like tribal indigenous ways. The music always has a certain bongo drum refrain in it. It sounds like music from the jungle, or trying to. You know, it's white people composing a lot of this, but in the Predator Prey, it's even more so. Like that's all like magnified even further. So like the shields, the weapons, the swords, even the Predator has a Predator Prey caster. The Predator has the plasma caster has been removed. Historically, Predator. I'm gonna see if I can play one. Predator plasma caster. Those 3 dots, right? Like the first trailer for Predator had this image as its thumbnail and as the central kind of money shot. You have an indigenous character with the holding the bow with the obviously, you have the brown face with the specific eye paint. It's like a lot of grass and blurry and close up and shot, but you can tell it's an indigenous person. And then you have like the 3 red dots on the head, and those 3 red dots is like that's like deep semiotics. You know that's the Predator. I mean, if you know your 80s action movies, you know that's the Predator. That's the Predator's. That is specifically the Predator's sight. Like one laser dot, that's the special forces coming in to remove a socialist head of an indigenous led revolution, right? Like the SEAL Team 6, or no, not SEAL Team 6, but like getting rid of Gaddafi or something, or Evo Morales. The 1 red dot, 3 red dots, that means it's the alien invader. So that's why they use that as the preview image, because people who would recognize it would know instantly what that means, like me, right? Weird sci-fi indigenous nerds like me, they know instantly what that means. And so what that, let me see if Predator plasma caster, see if I can find a GIF of it. So historically, the Predator, since I'm going off about the Predator's technology, historically the Predator had a weapon called the shoulder-mounted plasma caster. That's what it's called in Alien vs Predator, the online mud. By the way, where's the play no, that's the disc, the plasma weapon. Let's see, Predator plasma weapon. Can I get the GIF? Yeah. So it's this kind of gun that sits on the shoulder, and the Predator fires it with this you see on its head, it has that sighting, right? It has that sort of it has that triangular sighting, and I always get lost when I'm trying to find. These are all like, there it is, yeah. So the Predator has that laser sighting on its eye, and then it shoots a ball of plasma. Oh, that's broken. Anyway, you can see what's going on, right? So it puts that target on the head of the character, or on the body or the torso, and then from the Predator's shoulder, like this device here, right? It moves into position, right? Aims wherever the tri-pointed laser rangefinder is emitted from the helmet. It's actually coming from the helmet. So the helmet, the top left side, emits this sighting, and then the automatic plasma firing device basically targets that triangle. It's actually what the military uses to blow up people in Iraq. The U.S. Army on the ground will paint a target. It's also in StarCraft, because it's the U.S. military nuking people in space. It'll paint a target with a rifle that simply emits a laser sight to pinpoint exactly where a U.S. military Air Force strike is to occur, and then wherever that target is painted is one method of pinpointing specifically where to strike without the enemy detecting. So wherever the target is painted, the airstrike will happen. That's what this is actually based on, because military industrial complex writes Hollywood movies. So, but it's in the science fiction. So it's a helmet laser, and then there's a plasma fire that shoots, instead of shooting Lockheed Martin missiles and Hellfire death dealers, it shoots a ball of science fiction plasma at that point, blowing and eradicating whatever it hits, right? Just like in this video. But this is all based on U.S. military technology. The U.S. military doesn't have that. I mean, they would love to have that. That's part of. I'm sure a bunch of generals and Raytheon executives and all of Mr. Biden and Mr. Bush and Mr. Trump's relatives were all rubbing their hands like this, going, "How much money are we going to make selling shoulder-mounted socialism murderers, right? How much money are we going to make, blowing up some Afghans and some Iraqis with one of those, right?" And then they said, "Oh, well, we don't have the technology to make that," and everybody cried after that. Anyways, but dunking on U.S. empire aside, the shoulder-mounted plasma caster is in fact a weapon that was in all of the Predator movies, or some kind of plasma caster. I mean, not always shoulder, but using that triangular sight, right? In the Predator Prey movie, the triangular sight shows up. Prey, homing. What is it? It's like homing dart. It's like, I almost want to call homing arrow. So Predator uses homing arrows in the Predator movie. Let's see if I can try it. Yeah. So anyway, I'm not gonna give you spoil the whole ending, but let's just say, like, instead of my point, going back to before I started going off on this digression, Predator is much more even more not necessarily primal. The Predator is even more, looks like he is of nature. Obviously he's not. He's coming from another planet on a spaceship, right? But he looks, his weapons are even less science fictional looking. He still has the laser sight, but when he fires the bolts, instead of firing a burst of plasma energy, it's basically a homing arrow. It looks a lot like the arrows that the indigenous people are using, but instead of flying in a straight line, it will fly around in a circle until it hits one of the three dots. And this is part of the science, is as the Predator is in Prey, as the Predator is firing at its prey, right? Shooting, like, Naru is watching as the helmet is aiming three dots at a tree, right? Because somehow I think the helmet gets knocked off, or the helmet gets turned around. It's aiming three dots at a tree. The Predator gets distracted, and then all of a sudden the gun fires and the bolts go flying and hit the targeting. So it doesn't really matter. It's just this weird thing where it doesn't matter which way the gun is pointed when it fires. It will the projectiles always go exactly to the 3 dots. So Naru is, again, using indigenous observation and science, is like, okay, that's how that works. Okay, and then anyway, I'm not gonna tell you how, but like that comes back into play later. Into actually how to beat the Predator. So so yeah, that was I thought that all the way that all of that played out was really, I would argue that was done better than any of the Predator movies. Like I'd never seen like the attention like to detail and like the storytelling of the sequence that leads Naru to finally beating the Predator. It's just, as from storytelling perspective, it's better than every Predator movie. I mean, even the first one, I would argue. The first one is good. And like the heat. Predator sees heat, use cold, go under cover yourself in mud, and use the traps. The traps that Arnold uses are all stolen from the Viet Cong, so that's not really right. Just like the Ewoks are based on indigenous people of California next to George Lucas's rich white guy palace in Marin County. The Miwoks, right? The Ewoks from episode 6 of Star Wars, who use indigenous, right? Who are supposed to be based on the Vietnamese, using these, traps and spikes and swinging logs and, right, these tricks. Those are also based on what the Vietnamese did, by the way. So in Prey is the most legit actual. I feel like the Vietnamese would be impressed and satisfied with like the ingenuity of Naru and the characters, right? More than any of these other movies, And so that's my personal opinion. I don't know. I'm not a professional. I am not a professional extraterrestrial. I'm not a professional extraterrestrial demon hunter, okay? Because I am a demon, so why would I hunt myself? That would be cannibalism. That's some Army Hammer bullshit. I don't do that. That's some right wing shit. Anyways, anyways, all jokes aside, so I could probably go on for a long time about this. Let me just see if I had any other little, because I don't want to spend forever doing these videos. I'm gonna be out of here soon. I gotta finish Neofeud 2, the Neofeud 2 mini game. Yeah, so I like the kind of like the metaphors and the allusions and the allegory with the Predator, the animals being hunted, animals being hunted in the wild, both mammalian and non-mammalian and reptilian and insectile, which is what sustains life for indigenous people, and also that brings in the important. Oh my God, I didn't talk about the fucking colonizers yet, but anyways. Yeah, I could go off on that forever. So the oh my God, there's so many things. I just thought there's a beginning, in the very beginning of the show, in the very beginning of Prey. There's a sequence where Naru is coming to an area where there is plants. There's just a small hill of plants, right? Let's see if there's anything about that. Shoot, yeah, nobody's probably talked about it yet. Prey, potato, predator. I'm gonna get potato shot predator or something. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to find it. Okay. I was like, I hope I don't get some weird porn or some kind of weird potato face, bullshit. But anyway, I thought I was gonna get Mr. Potato Head Predator or something weird. I shouldn't have typed that into my browser. But anyways, there's a scene in the very beginning where Naru is in the woods, right? In the woods, not hunting, but in the very beginning, Naru's like kind of by herself, and with the dog. The dog's very cute as well. I know Holly really likes the dog. What's it? Shari? Sorry, can't remember the dog's name. But Naru is with the dog, and he's just walking to the woods, and then there's I think you can kind of see it here. There's little bundles of plants on the ground, and if you know anything, most people don't, but if you ever, if you learn something, if you know anything about indigenous people's actual agriculture, right? They did have advanced systems of scientific agriculture to make enough and produce enough food to sustain them, easily, right? Native Hawaiians, the same thing. And there's a scene where, and one of the techniques, just as a, this is kind of an aside, but this is why I like this scene, is the Three Sisters agriculture. I believe Anishinaabe indigenous people, where they will plant a corn seed, the Three Sisters, corn, squash, and bean, right? And they will plant the corn and the squash and the bean side by side in a small mound. It's called plural crop, as opposed to big ag, environmentally destructive, unproductive Western monocrop agriculture, right? The indigenous plural crop agriculture of Turtle Island would often involve planting the corn and the bean and the squash. And it's not the same, of course. There are many dozens or hundreds of different cultures with different styles of planting, and there are actually many varieties of corn based on the bioregion and the geography and the weather and the soil content and the rockiness and the sandiness of soil in different areas. They had different varieties, right? Like it's almost like a multicultural, actual rainbow of differences, both in terms of people's appearances, genders, and cultural and spiritual practices, and also differences of plant life, not monocrop Terminator capitalist murder seeds, right? That are the same everywhere, not fucking McDonald's everywhere, but like each area had its own different, defined, different appropriate type of and strain that was specifically cultivated and maintained for that reason, right? That would survive the colder temperate areas or the warmer areas. This one is for the mountainous area, right? There's a different corn and a squash and a bean for all these different areas, right? This is like incredible science you could do an hour or less work and feed an entire village easily. Hawaiians had our own kind of, it's not the same, but we had our own systems of management and indigenous biological and agricultural science that maintained our food supply without destroying it. The United States is less than 150 years. They've already wrecked multiple islands that can barely sustain life anymore. One literally cannot, Koho'olave, and they're doing it to every island, right? Anyways, so you plant the corn grows very tall, and it grows first. It is a tall, straight sister. In the way the story goes, but it's the story is mythology, it's culture, and it's also science, all in the same story. This is what the West does not get. Anyways, the young people, the young foolish peoples of the world cannot understand this. The corn goes straight up, and quickly later on the bean spirals around not circumnavigation, but circumambulation. Basically, like it ambles in a circle up around the cornstalk, and then the squash grows slowest and last, and it covers the ground, keeps out pests, and the nitrogen content that is absorbed by the bean sprout helps feed the corn. The pest removal and grass, shading squash helps the corn and the bean. Anyway, so the point is, together, the plural crop system of the Three Sisters allows minimum tending, maximum soil retains its nutrients and its viability over infinite amounts of time, basically, and minimizes the devastation of locusts, invasive insects, disease, rusts, fungus. Anyway, it's just but when you look at it. When you look at the Three Sisters agriculture from a Western lens, like the two-eyed seeing, right? You have your indigenous and you have your Western stormtrooper eye. When you look at it from the Western lens, all you see is a bunch of jungle, or what most Westerners from Europe, right? What the Pilgrims and the Spanish and the French colonizers in this movie see is just a bunch of savagery. It's just plants. It's terra nullius, right? The Vatican and Mr. Pope of the Holy Roman Empire looked at the New World and said, "This is heathen, savage land with no people, only animals." And we see fit to you Europeans bring civilization and Christianity, synonymous with civilization, and in the doctrine of discovery, you are justified, and God, the eye of providence and the eye of the Catholic God looks down and sees fit to clear this land, and make it civilized, right? And build suburban, monocrop, capitalist, racist, settler colonial empire all over that thing. But from the indigenous perspective, like they're like, what are you doing? This is like the best way to raise and grow food in this land, and this is how it goes. But and so like, but like this movie like looks very closely at things in many different scenes in ways that you still might not see it from your Western eyed seeing. It's like trying to spot an invisible predator, right? Seeing actual indigenous ways and science and civilization. But if you look very closely and if you know what you're looking at, there are scenes where you can actually see the three, like it's not three sisters, but it's like they have arranged nature in a specific way to grow in this specific way with minimal invasiveness and minimal damage to the environment. And then it's the scene where she goes and digs a potato. But I'm like, I've been growing a lot of potatoes. Like we're growing like 20 pounds of potato plus per month now. And I am very noob at this because America eradicated Hawaiian culture, right? Because of America and the West destroys ethnic minorities, unlike China, which empowers them, right? So because of that, I don't know as much as I would, but I know enough at this point to know that that's what's happening. You know, I have ungenocided myself from America's genocide of Native Hawaiians and of indigenous peoples generally to know that is actually what's going on in this movie. And just like she's digging the potato up, and I'm like, wait, I know what's happening there. You know, it's hard to explain to people disconnected from the natural world and from their own indigenous ancestors and relatives. It's hard to explain, but that's in the movie. But you know, part of the reason why that's in the movie, right? Part of the reason why that's in the movie is because the movie Predator Prey, it's Dan Trachtenberg, or so I think it's a white guy. I'm not sure exactly. I haven't looked his history up and his heritage, but they went to the Comanche and all the main characters are actual indigenous people. All the main characters speak an English version, and then there's also an indigenous Comanche version, right? Very few movies have that. I think it's a handful of movies. There's one movie Hollywood is talking about it. There's one movie with Navajo language, I think, that has a Navajo version. This entire movie, we watched it all in indigenous Comanche language, which is that's amazing in and of itself. So I've done an entire stream on the game Prey, right, which is another game that actually has an indigenous perspective. It takes into account the indigenous peoples. It's also a game that's made by it's just an American corporation. The lead producers are not, but like the input is not. It's not, and it's one thing to have indigenous input, like, you know, bring on an indigenous advisor to your Microsoft entity or game. You know, bring a consultant with some indigenous heritage to basically like give the blessing onto your tech product or your movie or your whatever it is, your college, whatever, right? We're not doing anything offensive and wrong, right? But the thing is like that, like not a lot of people are, that's happening. And I have lots of indigenous relatives that are telling me all the time, oh my God, Silver Spook, or oh my God, community. Like I have an indigenous game devs network and we're like, so people just asked for my input, and then I said this is problematic, and this is, can you not do this? And they just didn't listen. But they wrote on their company, front of their company, we listen to indigenous people. This was all approved by so like it's basically what a lot of Western corporations and entities want is they want to get out a guilt-free card. What the movie makers want is to have they do want sometimes just a token indigenous person or indigenous okay on whatever they did, right? We want to put a Native American in this scene of this movie that's nothing to do with them, and this person said it's okay. So, you know, but you know, but then sometimes you have movies and you have games and you have other things that actually listen. So my point is like, it's one thing to have an indigenous person say something, it's another thing to listen, and it's a third thing to not only listen but then implement what they're saying, right? And so, and I can tell, right? And then indigenous people can tell when you're actually implementing it. And so this is one of the movies that actually has has input from the Comanche, has input from indigenous peoples, has, like, as I said, like from the indigenous actors are saying, like, there's an entire binder full of reference and material to make sure that the scenes were you're never gonna get perfect historical accuracy, but like this movie is more serious. Like our Flag Means Death has a lot of things going on, but Our Flag Means Death is it's deeply important and authentic for both for the queer community, for Native people, especially Native island people like myself, Native people from islands of the world. But it's more of a humorous thing. It's not, and it is correct in its spirit. It is authentic in its spirit, but it's not like it's not at the level of trying to it's a different tone as this movie. Let's say it's different from Reservation Dogs, and not everything is a Taika Waititi movie. That's not, he does, and a Taika Waititi show. He's also an Indigenous person, but this is something different. But because it's more serious, right? It's not really funny, right? So it's a different tone. Because it's more serious, you need that extra level of, making sure that you're like authentically representing the people, and you can see and you can feel that, and it's not up to me to determine that though. It's up to the people who they're representing to determine that, right? But when I was watching it, based on all of my other Indigenous relatives and all the conversations that I'm always having, and everyone else that I've talked to about it so far, I haven't talked to everyone about it, but I know there's people are gonna have problems with things. I mean, I had a couple little things, but the way that they represent the actual agriculture, the way that they show, the way that the character has, down to the toothbrush that the character is using is the toothbrush from the 1700s that Indigenous people would have used. Like that's pretty. Hollywood making a Predator movie. If you just said Hollywood's making a Predator movie, I do not expect them to doing that level of research. You know what I'm saying? It's just some action movie, some silly action movie. But then like this one was like went way out of its way. I feel like this was like, like Revenant was trying to be historically accurate to. It's a similar time period in the colonization of the Americas era with Leo DiCaprio. But this one is more accurate and better, in many, many ways. And I haven't even gotten to the colonizers, but in Prey, and I'm gonna end because I gotta go shortly after this. But in Prey, colonization, there are colonizers in this movie. They are French. They're speaking French, virtually all of them. See, I don't think I can find any pictures. French in Prey Predator. I'm gonna find that. Yeah, I might not be able to find them. Oh, here, this guy. Yeah. So you have these guys. They are the French. They are there. They're slaughtering buffalo. They're taking them for the skins. They're enslaving and entrapping Indigenous people. They're kicking them off the land, right? They're invading the area. They like cut open the brother and they leave him out there to bleed out as bait for the predator at one point. And so, you have it's and it's the movie's from an Indigenous perspective. So you have a more honest look actually at what is happening in that period, which is, there are people that are just hunting. I think that was one of the quotes from the trailer, which is like, he lives to hunt, the predator, right? But I would argue also like a lot of the hunting just for sport, right? He hunts for sport. He just hunts for fun, right? We hunt to live, right? So Indigenous people like the mouse that's eating the ants, right? Or the snake, or the deer that's getting eaten by the bear, or the wolf eating the bunny. They're just hunting because they are, surviving in the world as the predators that they are. And the Indigenous people, the Comanche, are hunting because that's part of how they sustain and feed themselves and exist, right? In Turtle Island, or in North America, right? As it's sometimes known. And then there's the predator who is just killing to take skulls to put on his wall, like a trophy cabinet, right? He doesn't need to do that. He's just killing for fun, or killing for sport, just killing for the thrill. And then there are the colonizers that show up in Prey, and they are also killing and taking in the way they don't need to, or they're killing the buffalo and taking them for money, right? They're killing indigenous people to steal land. They're not doing it to survive, really, right? They're there for other reasons, whether that's selfishness, greed, profit, sometimes for sport, like British safari, like Western trophy hunting, right? They're doing it for not to survive. They're doing it for selfish reasons, let's say. And also they're in the they're in what is called the United States now, right? They're in native territory in the Americas for selfish reasons, right? To quote unquote build a better life, right? On the back of the doctrine of discovery and such, on the justification of bringing Christianity and civilization and utilizing these resources that are being poorly utilized by the indigenous people of Turtle Island. Now the United people of America are discovering, oh my goodness, California is even discovering, we should have listened to indigenous wisdom. The control burns, stop wildfires. We should do control burns. But not, I see a lot of ads for, we need to do control burns in California. But it's all being, again, co-opted and going, well, this is Western Americans that discovered this. They don't credit the indigenous people. They don't bring to the forefront. Indigenous people were telling the settlers from Europe to do this for a long time. And the settlers said, no, killed them and took the land and then ruined the land. And they go to the next place, kill and take the land and ruin that land, go to the next place, and don't listen to anybody. Don't listen. They say, we were growing, like I said, we were growing Three Sisters food. Anyway, so that aspect of what the European settlers are doing in this time, right, is factored into the movie as well. And that actually becomes an important point where, it's like, like many sequences have that thing of like, this creature is hunting that creature, this creature's predating that creature. The predator is predating on Naru, the indigenous woman, and then there's a bear, and then there's a bear trap. She steps in, and her leg is hurt. Predator comes, and predator doesn't want to hunt. Now the predator only hunts for fun. The predator finds it not fun to hunt a wounded creature because that's like that's no challenge, right? There's no great feat to defeat a creature that's ensnared by its leg being chopped up, right? Or there's one point where they're actually tied to a tree, and the predator does not want to hunt entities that are tied down to trees because that's no challenge, right? Now the predator does cheat, and somebody does call the predator in this movie. The brother of Naru goes, "You freaking cheater!" Because Naru's like chopping up, like throwing axes, and hits him like 10 times. The predator gets shot so many times. That's why I almost feel like Predator has God mode on. He typed in like DN God, the Duke Nukem and Doom God cheat. Anyways, that's a video game programmer joke aside, because I'm a video game programmer as well as being an indigenous person. But Predator is getting chopped up and attacked, and he's spilling his green fluorescent blood everywhere. And then all of a sudden he turns invisible. And then Naru's brother's like, "You freaking cheater!" And he kind of is though. He just goes invisible whenever It's like you could. I mean, there's times when he's actually losing, he does kind of cheat a little. It's kind of like we don't have the ability to do that kind of stuff. What is this? But generally, the Predator doesn't kill. He kills for the thrill and for the challenge. And so when the colonizers show up with their guns and he sees the guns firing, Predator's like, "What is this? This could be a dangerous species." And he has this kind of like visual, like it's unclear what language is being displayed in the retinal, the head up display inside of the Predator's mask. But it's like, there's a more challenging, like this is a higher prize. It's like the bigger fish, right? This is like the big lion when you were hunting a smaller puma. And so the Predator goes for the colonizers who have all these guns, right? And then actually that comes into play later though, because at one point, Naru is like, you have mistaken, right? At one point, Naru tricks one of the colonizer guys into grabbing a gun, because and Naru's like, you think I am not a threat, right? Because I'm a woman. You think I'm not a threat, or because I'm I'm weak, savage, indigenous woman. You think I'm not a threat, but you are mistaken, right? And you thinking that I'm not a threat makes me more of a threat, and that's how I'm going to kill you. And so because the predator does look out and goes, what looks like the biggest, most threatening thing, right? Bigger thing, sharp teeth, big muscles, right? Big, scary, but you know, that's not necessarily what makes the thing the most dangerous, right? And then anyway, so the guy grabs the gun and the predator's like, oh, you have the gun, and the dude's dead, but the gun has no bullets in it. Anyways, so there's like lots of stuff like that happens in the movie, and it kind of a predator. You could read the predator and prey as a kind of science fictional metaphor for what colonizers were doing, which is showing up and predating on indigenous peoples in a certain sense, and the predator is similar to the colonizers coming over in a sense that they're not hunting to survive. They're hunting. The predator is not the same as the European. The predator is mostly just hunting for fun. The Europeans are coming over and they're killing and skinning and taking the beavers and chopping all the trees down, taking the buffalo and enslaving and black people, enslaving indigenous people too, and murdering them for money, for profit, for selfish reasons. And sometimes they later on do things for sport, like hunt for sport. But Predator is just like there just to hunt for sport. Like it's unclear what kind of capitalism or socialism exists on Predator's home planet. Maybe it's more like Britain, you know, they just it's like a safari for them. But you know, anyways, my point is that like so there's a layer of dealing with the colonial relationships of the 1700s between colonizers and indigenous peoples, and finally, because it's now 12:50. Yeah, the gun from Predator 2. Okay, I know you all know this gun. If you all the hardcore Predator fans are gonna know this gun. The gun from Predator 2. I knew this. I asked Holly, look at my older streams. Look at a stream from 2 months ago when I talked about Predator Prey. I said they're gonna bring the gun up again, right? It is owned by Raphael Adolini. Is that Adolini? I think that's what it is. Andolini. So 1715. This is the gun that the Predator in Predator 2 on the Predator ship at the end, Danny Glover, who is the main character, is the urban predator in the urban riot / gang warfare that is shaking all of California in the near future, which is the 90s. Yeah, so I'm trying to find that one. Yeah, so on the ship, yeah. Anyway, so predator giving Danny Glover a gun. So I can find that. Try to find a scene that. Yeah. So yeah. So there's a scene here where the predator on the ship gives this gun. Right. Yeah. Here. So the predator takes this gun. There you go. Right there. He takes this gun. And now it's 1997, right? And he tosses the gun into Danny Glover's hands in the Predator ship, right? And Danny's like, what the hell? And he looks down at the gun, and the gun says, Raphael Adolini's 1715. And I was like, oh my God. When I heard there was going to be a Prey, when I saw the first Prey trailer, and I heard there was going to be, a Predator movie set in the 1700s, my first thought was, this is gonna tie in where that gun came from the 1700s that Danny Glover gets in Predator 2. That was the first thing I swear to God, that's the first thing I thought. That's what this is gonna be about. And I don't know. I feel like other people knew this, right? And so I just want to say I feel very vindicated, and I am an oracle and I'm a fortune teller. I'm gonna give you stock tips later on after this and tell you whether to short Nancy's semiconductors or go long American Treasury bills, but I'm just kidding. But I just want to say that I was right when I thought that this was going to involve the 1715, 1719 gun. Because the movie is set in 1719, shortly after the 1715 printing out the gun. So the guy was given the gun. I'm not going to say where the gun is at the end of the Predator movie, but let's just say it is the same gun. It's the same guy. It has his name on it. And so this totally ties that all together. And finally, okay, before I go, watch this. I'm going to take a real short break and then I'm going to wrap this up. But watch this short trailer for a game that I made that is not about predators. Actually, you know what? Let's quickly do my Neofeud predator reference. Yeah, there is a character. Let me see. Is Neofeud in the Predatorpedia? No way. I was like, what? Neofeud has a character that is a direct reference to the Predator. Okay, if you've ever played Neofeud, okay, this is a scene from my video game, my cyberpunk adventure game Neofeud. Neofeud is full of references to all kinds of fun things. But if you ever play this game, this dude, this very large dude with the mask on his head, I intended him to be a cross. It is a scene where the main character is being, he's 7 feet tall. Predator is markedly taller and bigger and stronger than humans by far. He picks up, like I said, the Predator picks up a 2,000-pound plus grizzly bear over his head in this movie. This character Talos is also known as that big ass mech ninja shredder, over weaponized asshole. I think there's 3 separate names that they call him. The Talos character is supposed to be a cross between Shredder and the Predator, and is made in an Area 51 lab. Also there's a scene where Carl Carbon tastes leaking green ooze from a junk pile that's being made into an apartment building, and he sticks the ooze in his mouth and he says, that's not battery acid, that's predator blood. So there's actually, Neofeud is full of these references. So and that's some random tie-ins that I thought I would bring up. And now watch the trailer for Neofeud.
The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
We don't get to choose our hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
I had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Anyways, long story short, check out Predator Prey. Really great movie. It's a great action movie. Best Predator of all time. Best Predator movie of all time. Great action. If it bleeds, you can't kill it, and that is Predator blood from a predator recently killed all over the face of an indigenous woman fighter, and that is Predator laser sighting on the retina. And yes. So, anyways, 2 alien thumbs up. Yeah, go check it out. Also, now, Neofeud is also on Steam and itch.io. If you have a second. Oh, you can help us out by picking the game up, checking it out if you like the trailer, and also wishlisting it. It's like Stray, but more not with a cat main character. It's like Disco Elysium, but with more cyberpunk characteristics. And Neofeud is also a game that if you leave even a very short review, it does help us get the game discovered in the algorithm. So do consider doing that. Check out Neofeud also on itch.io for Windows, Mac, and Linux. And also the maximum revenue comes to us when you grab it on itch.io. If you like Predator, you're going to like Neofeud, I'm pretty sure. If you like Prey and Predator, I mean, it's got... Neofeud is not exactly like Predator, I would say, but it has lots of 80s action movie stuff going on in it. Including Terminator and Alien and Predator and The Matrix. Well, that's not easy, but anyways, so you can check out that. Also, if you want strong female non-white protagonists of indigenous heritage fighting horrible murderers and invaders, Decolonators is a game where you kick capitalist colonizer butts out of Vietnam in retro arcade game glory. So check that one out. And also. I wonder what Luna thinks of Prey. Actually, I wonder what Luna thinks about that. I think Luna would like that. But Woman is a book by my partner Holly Argent about a woman raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity. You know this doctrine of discovery, dickhead guys who go by that. And it's a book that is critiquing that culture, and it is free, or you can name your own price and grab Woman. Also, if you want to support everything that we do here, consider supporting us through Patreon. At patreon.com/neofeud, consider how much are the streams worth, entertainment and education wise. $1, $3, $5 a month, whatever you can afford. It is massively appreciated. It does help us keep going as we are able to continue to do the work and keep the lights on, the roofs up, the vehicles and basic needs being met, internet on, and everything else. And so consider supporting us to keep doing this work. And you also get access to the Silver Spook Discord, and you get access to behind the scenes on stuff we're doing at the Silver Spook Hui Cooperative when you become Patreon. You can also follow Silver Spook Games at octodon.social or Silver Spook Games at mastodon.social on Mastodon, which is a decentralized non-capitalist social media platform. And you can also follow on the Death Star satellites while we have access to them. Silver Spook Guy is my personal Twitter account where I put my takes and movie stream and other review and stream links and stuff like this. And this is where I get, my God, this thread, man, this thread, people are really mad, man. Although people are not, people are like really like go get it. This thread has been featured in the world's largest Spanish language magazine, apparently, or news publication. Many separate Green Party of the United States, multiple communist parties of the US and Canada have shared this. Scottish members of parliament, Irish Green Left members of parliament, politicians from around the world, actually, like many Asian countries. There's one in particular, guess which one? And massive activists have shared this one thread. So I was like, I must have hit a nerve. And then there's lots of like right-wing crappy, CIA funded, State Department cutout clowns type people's, people trying to make money from war in, Taiwan Strait kind of clown, terrible people. But, most of it's like African people, Asian, Latin American, like, oh my God, it's like, why everybody? And then Hawaii too. So, but just remember, speaking, Prey is a movie about indigenous people. So just really quickly, it's a movie centering indigenous people. The U.S. banned our indigenous Hawaiian language, poisons our water to this day, invaded our country, destroyed our universal healthcare system we had, illegally occupies us to this day, and speaks of supporting Taiwan independence and democracy and human rights. But they have no grounds to speak on anyone else's independence and democracy. My mom's hand were broken for speaking Hawaiian in school, and we are punished today still for speaking Hawaiian like little girls who were put outside. Nothing happened to the teacher that did that. Put outside for speaking Hawaiian in 2022. So, that's what being Naru in 2022 sometimes looks like. It's like being, as Hanani K. Trash said, political, and taking down sometimes I feel like that's what I'm doing. I'm like stalking the wilds of the 21st century digital jungle, looking for unsuspecting, diseducated people to dunk on and cleanse the bullshit out of. I'm like hunting diseducated brains and putting education in it. Sometimes that's what I'm doing. So it's like, but like I'm not out in 1719 in the jungle. But anyways, follow Silver Spoon Guy for more of that kind of fun stuff. I've been approached by so many. I cannot respond to all of the responses. There's just so many people around the world. It's like, I want to interview for this. I want to interview for that. I'm like, anyways, Silver Spoon Games is also a game site that you can follow the games related stuff. Silver Spoon Games minus the Ian Silver. Terminus Cyberstar. Terminus C is a low poly cyberpunk immersive sim that I also am the content director on and lead writer. It is a game that's a cyberpunk RPG that is completed with the exception of testing and optimization. And yeah, I'm the lead designer on that, so I'm looking forward to seeing this fully realized. So if you want to follow that and get more updates about when that comes out, follow @TerminusC or join the Discord link in there. And you can also follow another person who has also was blowing up this week was @Kanaka Socialist. Lee Mohana is a Native Hawaiian Native Hawaiian leftist writing a book about history of Hawaii and its actual existing indigenous socialism and communism that we had in the pre-contact era, in the post-contact 1800s era, where we had the world's most advanced technological civilization, literacy rate, world-size literacy rate, no homelessness, universal healthcare before any country on the planet Earth invented submarines and lots of other things. If you want to learn about that and how Hawaii can rebuild and come back on the socialist path under indigenous Hawaiian socialism, Kanaka socialism, check out this account and follow the YouTube video. There's lots of good stuff there. You can also follow Holly Argent Holly is, as I mentioned, writes books like the book Women and also is the mod VA and partner, the master or the mistress, the mod extraordinaire here, modding for the stream, mod producer and writer for Xanattack The Lounge. I'm going to be working on another project with K-Nix, who also voices Tina Thatcher in Decolonators as well. And writer and also parent to Keiki. We're back to school, so we're working hard to make curriculum and teach school. We had a good first week of school. School's off to a running start. We're doing really good. We're decolonizing the crap out of colonial education, which our kids are not going to get because we teach our kids non-brain poison, which is what all Western schools teach, including the ones they install in Taiwan. Anyways, so Holly and I are very busy, but also, Holly is also managing the Silver Spook cooperative and tweeting important stuff like that. And you can also follow one more Native Hawaiian is _1983 is sharing information about these struggles like stopping the poisoning of our water at Red Hill, stopping desecration, returning our names back to the original names, not the colonizer names, line back, and making albums like Perfecting Perfection. That's _1983. And so finally, my final answer. How many tomahawks out of, that's not tomahawks. So how many predator bloods out of 5? I say I 5.5 predator bloods out of 5. That's how many predator bloods I give prey. Movie of the year so far until I think of something else. Can't think of, nothing's coming to my head. Movie of the year right now. For me. Anyways, thanks a lot, patrons. Be sure to thanks so much for your continued support. Really helps us out to keep doing what we're doing. Thanks a lot, everybody, for hanging out in the stream. Have fun watching the movie. Watch the movie. Give it lots of whatever it needs support. Demand more Predator Prey type movies so we can get more of them. Unless Star Spangled Underpants bullshit. Just more movies like that. More actual, authentic, indigenous voices and stories. And not just token indigenous people, like actual, for real indigenous stories. Oh, I'll watch Reservation Dogs too. Shit, that thing just everything came out this week. I don't have space and time to do all of them, but yeah, Reservation Dogs, watch that too. Until next time, keep your mirror shades polished and be excellent to each other. And just remember, watch out for the 3 dots on the head. You got the 3 dots on the head. Put a rope. Take your measuring Hawaiian rope and tie it around your hatchet. Because you might have to do boomerang hatchet action to take that motherfucker down.